Story 1. Imaginary friend Jessie poured me some tea. We were using the pink tea set today, and I was wearing a dress that matched with pin K polka dots. Jessie had a blue jumper on, her favorite, and her sunshine-colored hair was high up on her little head into long braids. Jessie smiled at me, and I felt very warm inside. Would you like some more tea? She asked politely, holding up the pink teapot high in the air. I nodded excitedly, holding out my cup, and she filled it up. The tea was the best I ever had, fruity and smooth and sweet and delicious. I drank it in one gulp. She held her cup to me. Can you pour me some? I did so. Jessie was beaming at me after she drained a cup. She was missing 2 of her front teeth. She told me that new teeth would grow in to fill the holes. New, big, adult teeth, she said. I looked at her, wide-eyed, amazed at how bodies worked and teeth could just grow back after being yanked out. It made me giggle, like it did when those teeth were loose and she would wiggle them around. Finally, one day she gave a gentle tug to one of them, and out it popped. She called for me, and I ran to her and saw her waving the tooth around proudly. She got $1 under her pillow that night, and the tooth disappeared. Jessie told me that the tooth fairy had taken her tooth and given her the $1. I instantly hated this tooth fairy. Why would anyone want a kid's tooth? What was this fairy doing with teeth that she collected? It couldn't be anything good. I decided right then that if I ever ran into the tooth fairy, that would be the end of her. Sadie, I forgot. Mommy made cook. Yes, do you want one? Jessie called as she ran out of her playroom. She knew I would love cookies, especially when Mommy made them. A second later, Jessie ran back into the playroom with her hands full of cookies. She set them down on our plates. They were chocolate chip, my favorite. We gobbled them up instantly. The rest of the afternoon we played tea party, and then princess fashion show, and then watch some cartoons. Jessie's older sister was home, but Chelsea was in her room and not really paying attention to Jessie. Good thing I was there to look after her. Around 4:30, Mommy came home. Jessie ran to her and gave her a huge hug. I waved at her from the stairs, feeling shy, but she just ignored me. Mommy was the prettiest woman, just like many of the ladies I saw on TV when Jessie took a nap or left me alone. Sometimes I watch grown-up TV shows. I saw many women on the shows who looked like Mommy, and I couldn't help but wonder if any of those women was Mommy. What did you do today? Mommy asked as she took off her coat and hung it up. Did Chelsea feed you? Sadie and I played all day, and we ate cookies, the ones you made. Jessie beamed at Mommy. You ate all the cookies? Mommy looked unhappy at this. No, I had half and Sadie had half. Jessie crossed her arms. Honey, Sadie didn't eat any cookies. I pouted and crossed my arms just like Jessie. Of course I ate the cookies. We also played princess fashion show. Sadie wore the blue dress, and I wore the pink one, and we wore crowns and put on lipstick my lipstick. Mommy ran into her bedroom and made an angry sound. Jessica, how many times do I have to tell you not to touch my makeup? This lipstick is very expensive. And tea was my favorite one. I don't even know if they make this one anymore. I didn't mess it up. Sadie put it right back on your table when we were done, and we didn't break it or anything. Sadie put it back. Mommy narrowed her eyes at Jessie. Yes. Jessie sighed. Frustrated, I frowned and ran out of the room, tears stinging my eyes. Mommy had just tucked Jessie in for the night. She ignored me again, so I had to tuck myself in next to Jessie. I don't think she liked us sleeping next to each other, for whatever reason, but I didn't let it discourage me. Jessie and I had matching pajamas, yellow with Disney princesses on them. Her favorite was Ariel, and my favorite was Rapunzel. I watched Mommy kiss Jessie on the forehead. Then she turned off the light and shut the door. Or most of the way, Sadie, does Mommy make you feel bad? Jessie whispered after a few minutes, sure that Mommy was far enough to not hear us. I bit my lip and nodded sadly. She hugged me tight under the blanket, and I smiled big. A while later, Jessie was sound asleep beside me. I was wide awake still, thinking about Mommy. At first I was sad, but the more I thought about her, the angrier I got. Why wouldn't Mommy treat me with love? Why wouldn't she even say hello to me? Jessie was my best friend, and she should be nice to me. I quietly slipped out of the bed and padded down the hallway to Mommy's bedroom. Mommy was on her bed, talking on the phone quietly to someone. I know. What should I do about it? She's 8 years old now. Isn't she too old for an imaginary friend? It's just not healthy, I don't think. No, I know. Maybe I am overreacting. I don't know. I stood frozen to the spot, gaping at Mommy. Was she talking about me? I never saw Jessie with any other friends outside of school. She must have been talking about me. Mommy talked on the phone a little while longer, mentioning something about a doctor and therapy, and then talking about going out to a restaurant with someone named Claude. Finally she hung up, switched her TV on, and laid down to relax. I clenched my fists tightly, watching her through the crack in her doorway. Uncertain what to do, I decided she wasn't worth it, and went back to Jessie's room, back to bed. The next day was beautiful and hot. Summer was the best time of year, because Jessie was home all the time, and we always got to play. Sometimes during the school year I'd go to school with her, but I would mainly stand around the classroom and look at all the pictures and posters, and then, geez, I couldn't really talk to Jessie at all, and I don't think her other friends wanted me there. That night after dinner, Mommy pulled Jessie into her room to talk to her alone. Sie cried for me to come too. But Mommy said this had to be a private conversation between the two of them, and it was very important. I sat on Jessie's bed for a few minutes, but eventually curiosity overcame me, and I creeped down the hallway again back to Mommy's bedroom. I stood outside the door, keeping myself tucked to the wall so Jessie wouldn't know I was there. I listened to what Hey were talking about. Honey, would you like me to talk to your friends' moms, maybe Kelly or Melody? Have them play dates you through the summer? Mommy asked gently. They're way at camp, Jessie said curtly. What about your sister? Chelsea can take you on trips when she's not working. Maybe go to the movies or the zoo. Mommy, what are you talking about? I have plenty of company with Sadie right here when you're not home, honey. Mommy sighed. Then she said, Sadie isn't real? What? She's real. I see her every day. She has black hair and blue eyes, and she loves your cookies. She can fit in my clothes, and we have tea parties just about every day. She's my best friend. Sadie is real. Note, she is imaginary. She does not exist. Mommy was yelling now, and I heard her get up and start pacing. Jessie began to cry. She does. Jessie yelled, and she repeated it over and over. She does, she does, she does. Sadie is real. No, Jessie, she is not. And you are going to see a doctor who will help you accept that fact. Sadie is not real, and you need to spend time with real people, with other little girls and boys, other kids from school, maybe. No, I want to be with Sadie. We will talk about this tomorrow. Go to your room and go to bed. Brush your teeth first. I hurried back to Jessie's bedroom and tucked myself in, holding my tears by CK. How could anyone say someone does not exist? Mommy has known me for years. How could she deny me? I was furious. The important thing was, though, that Jessie knew the truth. Jessie knew I was real, and Jessie loved me. That was what mattered. She didn't need Mommy. I was the important one. A minute later, Jessie came into the bedroom, sobbing. I hugged her tight. She doesn't understand. Jessie sobbed. You're my best friend. How could she say you're not real? I shrugged. I tucked Jessie in, trying to soothe her. You are real? Sadie, you're my best friend. She was crying as she slipped off to sleep. I sat on the bed and waited a long time, maybe about 2 hours, and then made my move. I tiptoed into the hallway, down to Mommy's room again. Her door was open a few inches, and the TV was droning softly in the background. Mommy was fast asleep, her glasses on her face still. I entered the room and went right up to the edge of the bed, only inches away from Mom. I stood there silently staring at her, unsure if I wanted her attention or not. Yes, a voice inside my head said, let her see me. Let her really see me. I coughed, and Mommy's eyes shot open. She jumped when she saw me. Jessie, what are you doing? I shook my head. Not Jessie. Who are you? Mommy was squinting at me in the dim light. I went over to her desk and turned on the lamp. Something caught my eye. A tiny porcelain box with the lid half off. I peeked inside. The small baby teeth laid in the box. The tooth fairy. I was going to keep my promise. Sadie, I croaked. That might have been the first time I had ever spoken. My name is Sadie, Sadie, Sadie. Mommy stared at me in terror. Sadie is not real. Sadie is Jessie's imaginary friend. She was sputtering the words out. Rage welled inside me. I was unaware of my actions and flew on top of Mommy right there on her bed. My small hands wrapped around her pretty neck, and I squeezed hard. Mommy clawed at my hands. She tried to claw at my face, too. I bit at her hand, and she tried to scream. She rasped and flailed for what seemed an eternity, but I didn't let go. I wanted her to know how real I was. Imaginary friends couldn't kill. I wasn't imaginary. Mommy stopped moving. I tucked her in and kissed her forehead goodnight. Story 2. Genevieve's Smile. Note: this story is a true, unembellished personal experience that occurred on December 9th, 2010. I've always been a skeptical, logical person, a critical thinker. At a young age, my father A doctor told me that everything outside the physical realm is a myth after I had a nightmare about demons. Hocus pocus, he said, an illusion created by errors of the human mind. By the age of 5, I didn't believe in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy. Nevertheless, I loved horror movies and supernatural subjects because I thought they were fascinating, even from a scientific standpoint, and I think on some subconscious level I wanted to discover something so unbelievable as a ghost. That's probably one of the reasons I decided to visit the North Trestle. The North Trestle was an old, outdated railroad bridge that towers high over a narrow part of North Lake, a winding river valley flooded by a dam over 60 years ago. The bridge is even older than the lake, and as with all OLD things, people perpetuate rumors about the bridge being haunted by a ghost of some kind. The story goes that Genevieve, a wealthy girl who went to our high school in the 60s, used to secretly meet her female lover at the bridge on moonlit nights. When her controlling mother found out and wouldn't let her see the girl anymore, she hung herself from the bridge. Apparently, if you walk across the bridge on a full moon, you'll see her. Genevieve was a classic story every freshman at our high school heard, and I thought it was just stupid. One day I decided it'd be fun to go to that bridge and film it for our school newscast, hopefully to put the dumb story to rest. Chris, our editor, was all for going with me, and our friend Jenna wanted to go just to see something. NG happened firsthand 1 week later on a full moon. We grabbed a camera and a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and headed for the bridge. We took the North Road farther and farther out of town until almost white pine trees and cornfields surrounded us. This was the part of Catawba County most people didn't think about, a dark corner of the map. Thank God for the full moon, I thought to myself. We hadn't seen a street light for miles, and I have pretty bad night blindness. Even basic shapes I can't make out if the sun is down or the lights are dim. After what seemed like forever, we finally saw moonlight shimmering on water and parked in a marina near the bridge. It's gold. Jenna shouted as soon as we opened the car door. Good, I said. We need a cold, clear night like this. I don't even think we need a light for the camera. But for some reason the moonlight piercing the cold air was more eerie than total darkness. The way the light trickled through the pine trees to the bare ground, in some odd way it felt like the night wanted to show us something. As we walked along the rusted railroad toward the bridge, Chris spoke up. So we walked to the middle of the bridge. Then you film some there, then walk to the other side of the bridge, then come back. We get at least 10 minutes of film, and I'll edit out the boring parts. Good plan. But the whole thing's gonna be boring parts, I said. You don't know that, Dan, Jenna replied. Walking on the trestle bridge was nerve-wracking in itself. The gaps were easily large enough to step through, and as soon water was below us, we were at a dizzying height. Could you jump off this thing? Maybe we should come back here in the summer, Chris noted. It's gotta be pretty deep, I added. Well, you can have fun with that, Jenna replied. She was usually the voice of reason. Just before we got to the middle of the bridge, I was paralyzed. A cloud had covered the moon, and I might as well have been in a cave. Hold up, guys, I can't see where to walk. They were both shocked. You can't even see the bridge. I can't see my own hand, I clarified. Just chill out. and give me a second. I felt around for the wood ties and made slow progress. Why did we trust you with the camera? They laughed, don't trip, and drop that tea. Hing to my relief, the cloud passed and the moon came out again. Finally, we made it to the bridge's midpoint and sat down to film some uninteresting material. Here we are at the North Trestle, said to be the one and only place to see Genevieve's ghost. High school students in our area have heard this story for over a decade. Chris narrated enthusiastically for several minutes until the low battery light came on. Oh crap, he said. Dan, you walk down to the other side of the bridge and come back. That should be enough time for Jenna to go get the spare battery. Yeah, right. I'm not going by myself. Jenna spoke up. Fine. I'll go with you. He compromised. They set off back toward the car, and I went in the other direction to reach the other side. On leave 5 minutes later, I heard a loud, high-pitched scream, Jenna. I said out loud I reasoned she must have tripped or fallen. But when I looked back down the long track, I saw they had both already made it off the bridge. The scream also sounded like it came from the other direction, the direction I was headed. I kept walking, though somewhat more reluctantly. For the first time, a cold breeze blew. Some dull, low noise was now humming. I wasn't sure what it was, or if it was just my heightened hearing detecting some distant disturbance. A few minutes later, I was at the last quarter of the bridge, feeling more confident that the North Trestle was just a bridge, and the only trace of Genevieve was 6 feet underground, somewhere, dusk by now. That confidence was shattered, however, when I looked toward the sky. A cloud was on its way toward the full moon again, and beyond that were a few more clouds. Damn, I said aloud. Seconds later, I was cloaked in darkness. All right, nothing to panic about, I tried telling myself. But the sound of that bizarre scream was still in my mind, and the low humming noise was getting louder. I shuffled and felt for the right steps, slowly making progress toward the other side of the bridge. Daniel, something ahead of me whispered faintly. I froze. It had to be the wind. At that point, I just wished I could see something, even just a shadow, but there was no hint my eyes could give me. I walked forward. I thought I heard breathing as I slowly found the right places to step. Suddenly, something rushed past me. I turned around and shouted, "Hey, who's this?" Now I knew my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. Someone was here. It had to be someone there to play a prank on us, I thought, or some homeless wanderer who wanted to be left alone. I stopped and placed the camera on the track. Having a camera is one more reason for someone to kill me, I reasoned. I'd go back and get it later. For a few minutes, Washington hided until my phone rang. It was Jenna. Dan, we have the battery. Is that you coming towards us? Did you film the other side yet? I shouted at first chance. No, it's not me. Go back to the car. I think someone's here. She hung up. Okay, I thought to myself, how do I get back to the car? This person trapped me. I thought about going to the other side, but I'd never be able to find my way in those woods. Even if I could, I'd be on the other side of the lake, and there wasn't another bridge for miles. Damn, I said aloud again. I would have to confront his person, say I'll leave and never come back and get to off this terrible bridge. I shuffled some more in the dark, heading back the way I came. A minute later, the moon came out again, and I saw it. A figure was coming my way. The bridge was only lit for a few seconds until the moon again disappeared behind a cloud. I shuffled forward, my shaking leg almost falling through a gap. The moon came out again, and it was much closer, only about 200 yards away, but still it looked like just a shadow. The moon disappeared again, and I shuffled forward, now shaking so much I thought I might fall. When the moon came back out, I stopped cold. The figure was closer now, only about 100 yards away, and I could make out its unusual features. It was limping forward, its arms swinging as if they were sewn on. Greasy black hair hung down to its knees, and its head was tilted to the side. But the face, that's what made my blood turn cold, made my stomach feel sick. It was off-white with a green hue, and blank, no eyes, nose or mouth, just a wrinkled texture like a pumpkin that had rotted. I prayed that the next cloud wouldn't cover up my only light again, but my prayer went unanswered. Darkness fell again. It's someone in a mask. It's someone in a mask. It's someone in a mask, I tried telling myself. But something in me said otherwise. The way it moved was just unnatural. I tried backing up slowly, almost tripping. How cold is this water, I thought. How high am I? Wait, what am I thinking? Why is that an option? What are my other options? I looked up and saw the moon just about to reveal itself. My legs were shaking like jello, barely holding me up. I had the feeling someone gets just before they bungee jump. Though I didn't have a bungee cord, moonlight crept out from behind the cloud one more time, and I caught one terrible glance. It stood 10 feet in front of me, head tilted to the side. I was wrong about one thing. It did have a mouth, a hideous smile spread wide across its blank face. Its wrinkled skin spread to reveal black gums and jagged teeth. Daniel, the smiling mouth said. It took one step forward. Instinct took over, like when your hand pulls back after touching a hot pan. My legs threw me sideways, my mind not even calculating how far I needed to jump to avoid the concrete foundation below. My stomach dropped, but I didn't even look at the water I was headed towards. I didn't straighten out or prepare for the impact for all that time. As the cold air rushed past my body, the image of that grotesque smile was imprinted in my mind. Only at the last second did I twist and avoid my back hitting the water first, as I narrowly missed the concrete. Even submerged in icy water, all that was on my mind was her smile. Even shivering in my boxes on the car ride home, all I could see was Genevieve's smile. Story 3. Everyone loves my tomatoes. I've loved gardening, Eve. Since I was young. My mother was a gardener, too. She taught me all of her tricks of the trade, got me to just love the taste of fresh produce. Not even that supermarket fresh were. They cover them with wax or make them look shiny and perfect like they were photoshopped onto the shelves. To me, there's nothing more satisfying than plucking something off the plant, fresh and still smelling of the garden, running it under some water, and taking a big bite out of it. My mother and I tended to the garden a lot. It wasn't to the point of obsession, not like my dad teased us about it. We just planted the seeds, pulled the weeds, gave them water, and something to give the soil an extra kick when it needed it. We mixed our own fertilizer, a secret recipe my mother taught me. My dad never liked being outside when we did it, though he said we always stunk up the whole backyard when we mixed it. Neither of us minded that he didn't care to spend time in the garden. Garden time was strictly mother-daughter time. Besides, for all his complaining, my dad did always love the stuff we grew. I don't think I've seen a man since him eat so much salad at dinner. It was a happy time, of course. It's not like that anymore. My dad died in a car accident about 5 years back, and my mother, after a long and hard-fought battle, finally succumbed to lung cancer about 3 years ago. She ate healthier than any person I've ever known, but she always did like a smoke. I grieved, of course, but I moved on. I own my childhood home now, and the garden with it. Of course, I have plenty of friends, some of the crunchy granola type, and some not. Much as I love fruits and veggies, I could never go vegetarian or even vegan like my best friend Sasha started a few years back. I can't help it. I love burgers too much, so I've got a decent life. A normal job working in administration alongside my best friend Sasha in the same company. You might wonder why I don't work in a plant nursery or something like that. But, well, it's like my dad always said, best to keep work and pleasure separate. I love my gardening, and it's a big hobby for me, but it's just that, a hobby. Well, a productive hobby, anyway. I always grow too much to eat on my own, so I always end up giving a bunch away to my friends. They all love it. They literally eat it all up, especially my tomatoes. Ever since I was little, my mom joked that I had a red thumb instead of a green one. Whenever I cared for and tended to tomato plants, they always grew big and beautiful, and delicious. Every tomato season each of them flourished and produced a big old bumper crop. I would have literally baskets of the things. In peak of the season, my dining room looked like a farmer's market. That is, if a farmer's market only, stocked up on tomatoes. All of my friends looked forward to it each year. When I told them I had some, word would spread fast, and soon I have my phone buzzing, people calling dibs on who would get some first. Believe me, I wasn't upset about this. Like I said, I grew a lot, way too many for just one person to eat before they went bad, so I was happy to give a lot of them away. My friends loved them, and I was only too happy to share. The only one who ever really got overwhelming about them was Sasha. She loved them more than anyone else. I would make a mention of them, and she'd get this look in her eye. She always seemed to know when they should start growing, too. She tracked the growing seasons of things. I assumed it was to keep track of when the best produce would be in her favorite organic and health food stores. But she was always so adamant about tomato season. We would be sitting next to each other at work, and she would listen to me talk, but I noticed she would subtly steer me towards the topic of my garden. And then she would start talking about health food and how she loved the stuff I grew, and oh hey, wasn't it almost about time for my tomatoes to start growing? It wasn't a lie, and I always said yes. And how her eyes would always light up. She was always offering to help me out around my garden throughout the year, because she was someone who hated taking without exchange and wanted to do something for all the stuff I grew and gave to her. She'd been that all the time I knew her for, but she did get oddly fixated on my tomatoes. She'd work around them, care for them even better than the other plants around them. One time when I had to pull a tomato plant because it got infested by bugs, I swear she looked like she was about to cry. And look, I know that it sounds weird that I lost a tomato plant with how much I touted Miss Elf about being good at growing them, but hey, I'm just a gardener, not a miracle worker. It happens to the best of us. But if you want to know something weird, I'll tell you about later that day. It was late when she finally left, a basket full of produce from the day's work and plenty of tomatoes, of course. I didn't stick around to watch her go. I just went inside the house, expecting her to leave through my back gate, too, where her car was parked on the street. But as I passed by a back window on my way to the kitchen, I glanced out and saw her standing near the side of my house where I kept my garbage cans, and I kid you not, I swear I saw her rifling through the trash and pulling out handfuls of half-grown, insect-riddled tomatoes. She ran off before I could go out and ask her about it, though, which brings me to the big incident, where I finally realized that Sasha's love for my tomatoes went to far more than an innocent craving. I was going into my backyard to mix some compost on a warm summer night. I like doing my mulch when it's warm, courtesy of a tip from my mother. So I headed out with a 5-gallon bucket, half full of the usual materials I use for it, intending to make a beeline for my compost heap, when all of a sudden I hear a rustling from further in the garden. Used to the occasional occurrence of a rabbit or some other animal uprooting and eating my stuff, I picked up my shovel and stomped over there, intending to take care of whatever was making all the racket. What I did not expect to find was Sasha, knees pressed into the dirt, half covered in mud, and holding a tomato in each hand, with what looked like a third one stuffed in her mouth. In shock, I asked her what the hell she was doing in my backyard, stealing from my tomatoes. I know I give a lot of stuff away, but she was still taking my stuff without my permission. And given we'd been best friends for so long, it kind of hurt to think she would be stealing from me. She swallowed hard, and I almost winced with the sound of it, and the size of the lump that went down her throat. In such a small, strange voice, she said she'd been hungry, but she'd run out of tomatoes. They filled her stomach so well, and she just had to have some. Well, seeing as she was my best friend, and I didn't want to ruin that over some tomatoes, I sighed and lowered my shovel, telling her to just put down the tomatoes she held, and that she could come back tomorrow and have some if she helped me out again. Her eyes oddly blank, and she stared at me too long for me to be comfortable. She did stand up, but unsteady, almost wobbly, and then she bolted at me, and in the gleam of the summer moon I saw her brandishing a small hand rake I use for gardening. She had this weird, crazed look in her eye, and her teeth were bared, stained with juice and seeds, but otherwise glinting in the moonlight with what had to have been thousands of dollars of her expensive dental and orthodontics work on her perfect teeth. I shattered those teeth when I swung the shovel in her face. Bits of white flew out of her mouth as she was too shocked to even cry out in pain. By the time she was on the ground, I already had the shovel up over my head and swung it down onto her exposed neck. With a gurgle and a sputter, that was it, I stepped on the hand with my hand rake until she let go, and waited as the life left her shocked, crazed eyes. while she bled out profusely onto my grass. When I was sure she was finally dead, I grabbed her by the wrist and dragged her to the compost pile. I could hose off the plants later. Besides, the extra moisture from her blood would be good for them in this heat. After dropping her onto the compost heap and grabbing my axe, I went about cutting her to pieces, careful to do so in a way that would leave her in smaller pieces no bigger than my palm. I don't think she would have been so keen on my tomatoes if she knew that animals were, in fact, harmed in their growth. As she proclaimed, her vegan lifestyle was meant to be about all the dismembered raccoons and rabbits and squirrels and the like. Most definitely were killed to make them when I mixed them into the mulch. I finished up quickly and set about mixing Sasha into the mulch. Their wool, DB leftovers, but I could hide the rest of her under the compost until then. Waste not, right? It's a funny thing. I've tried this method on other plants before, but the only is it seems that this method of fertilizing gives so much more flavor are the tomatoes, as I discovered in multiple experiments since I was a child. When I had decided to bury a dead bird I had found in with the tomato seeds without telling my mother. Those were some of the best tomatoes we'd ever grown, and one of the things I always love being praised for. I hoped Sasha would be happy, I think, as I carefully fold the mix of compost, raccoon flesh, and what looks to be part of Sasha's ear into the dirt around the first tomato plant. She's always loved these tomatoes, repeating over and over how she'd diet to know how mine get to tasting this good. Not only should she likely know now she be a part of the process. I hope this next crop grows out soon enough. I can't wait to have everyone try one and see how this crop tastes. Story for the Meyer. What in God's name? Everett exclaimed as he looked down by his feet. Another dead animal, he fifth one in 2 days, and in the exact same spot as the one before. Who keeps doing this shit? I swear you move miles outside of any town and people seem to still be able to find you. He grabbed his shovel from the shed, scooped up the animal, and disposed of it out in the mire behind his house. John Claris. Get out here or you'll be late for school. Everett yelled at the top of his lungs to his kids on the 2nd floor. Yes, Papa, Claris chimed. No word from John. Everett marched upstairs to see what was going on. Claris was doing her normal morning routine, fixing her hair, picking out a best uniform, brushing her teeth, and yet there was silence from John's room. Everett went to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. That damn boy is going to be the death of me. Everett reached above the door's frame and grabbed the spare key to John's room. Unlocking it, he proceeded to open the door. Everett let out a gasp in shock. John, he cried, wondering why he was still asleep. Get your ass up. Nah, you will be late. John jumped out of bed and nearly out of his skin. Sorry, Papa. I must have slept through the alarm this morning, he sighed. Everett put his palm to his face and slowly shook his head. You have 5 minutes or you're walking, you understand? John shook his head accordingly and proceeded to quickly ready himself. His sun had already started to beat down on Everett early that morning around 9 o'clock and slowly became brighter and hotter. Lunchtime rolled around and he strolled back up to the house from the cattle field to eat his normal lunch, consisting of a bologna sandwich and potato salad. As he reached the door, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye that seemed off. As he looked down by his feet, he saw yet again another dead animal. In a fit of rage, he slammed his fists against the door, yelling and cursing as loud as he could. Why, I'm doing everything I can. For my family, I just want peace. He collapsed in the rocking chair on the back porch and wept. He felt as if he had reached a dead end. Just as he had begun to collect himself, an icy chill ran down his spine. He got the unnerving feeling of being watched. He slowly lifted his head from his hands, now wet from tears and snot, and looked around, left to right, looking out for a mile. As he didn't see anyone and decided to go inside and rest. He ate his sandwich and potato salad as usual, and went to lay down on the couch. About 2 hours passed when Everett bolt upright on the cool sea edge, sweating and shaking from the cold. Every hair on his body was standing straight up, and all of his muscles were tense. He sat there in fear for a moment before he could move again, and slowly lifted himself off the couch. Everett had felt this feeling before when his wife came home before, but she wasn't home this time. Not yet. Everett strolled to the bathroom and washed up before returning to the fields for a couple of hours. After collecting himself, he went back into the living room to collect his things and hurried out to the field so as not to get behind on his work for the day. After heading into town and picking up his children from school, Everett stopped at the gas station to top off and get his kids a small snack. While waiting on their father to return, Clarice was daydreaming out of the window. She wanted to star in big Hollywood movies and give her family somewhere nice to live. As a matter of fact, she wanted all of them to be stars. She wanted everyone to have their own big house and swimming pool. It was hard to keep up with all the new ones ever since her father threw the television out, stating, "TV rots our brains, turns us into mind-controlled freaks," Clarice thought. Otherwise, however, thinking it was a portal to other worlds, seeing vast lands and intriguing characters, she was completely enthralled with the television. Out of the corner of her eye, something seemed to break her daydreaming. She thought she had seen slight movement in the abandoned house across the street from the gas station. As she focused, she confirmed she had, in fact, seen movement. In the far right window, she could make out the shape of a person standing there and staring right back at her. They seemed to be dirty, almost as if they were covered in mud. Clarice continued to stare from the window until her father returned and startled her with the opening of the car door. "What you staring at us?" "Oh, hard, sweetie," asked Everett. "Nothing, Papa. Just thought I had seen something in that house over there." Must have been nothing, and for a moment she thought she was right. As she looked back, she didn't see anything or anyone, for that matter, just an empty window in an empty house. As they began to pull out of the gas station, Clarice felt a slight touch on her ear. That made her hair stand on end. She looked back at the house as they were driving off and saw the muddy figure once again before the house faded in the distance. Later that evening, after the kids each had finished their homework, ate a sizable helping of dinner, and bathed their sweaty bottoms, Everett tucked them in and read them each a quick story before bed. As he did every night, he turned off their lights shut their doors, and poured himself a nice glass of whiskey as he sat on the couch. He pondered the events that took place that day, racking his brain trying to discern some possible answer as to why dead animals keep appearing in the same spot. His mind raced and raced and raced some more before he finally downed his whiskey, brushed his teeth, and turned in for the night. Eric lay awake in bed for what seemed like hours, unable to drift off to sleep. After finally finding a comfortable spot, it finally seemed as if Everett would get some decent sleep. Maybe upon falling into a deep sleep, Everett had a vivid dream of Margaret, his wife. Oh, how he longed for her to return home from her trip. She was on a business trip for work that has lasted almost a week now, and for Everett it seemed like an eternity. Being a CEO was hard work, but being the husband of a CEO was even harder. Especially with 2 kids, he wanted nothing more than to hold her again, especially with the events that had been taking place before the animals. It was simple things such as flowers and bark. Then it just evolved from there. Who knows what would be next? Rhett stirred and even smiled as he dreamed of seeing his beautiful wife again. But that was all disturbed when, from downstairs, came loud thuds, as if someone were running through the house. Everett jumped, paid out of bed, and grabbed his point for Magnum from the dresser. "Who's there?" he called out. "John Claris. If either of you have woken me up, I promise you'll be GR hounded a month." Silence. No, not even that. Dead silence. The thuds ceased almost instantly, and there was not a sound except for the pounding of Everett's heart in his chest. As he neared the staircase, he heard doors crack from behind him, simultaneously hearing, "What's wrong, Papa? Is everything okay? We heard you yelling." Everett looked back, wide-eyed with fear, and slowly turned his gaze back towards the staircase. After a moment of silence, he whispered, "Kids, get back in your rooms and lock the doors. Someone may be inside." They did not hesitate to quickly run back to their rooms and lock their doors. Everett sighed, wiped the sweat from his brow, and quietly went down the stairs. Upon reaching the bottom of the staircase, he stopped and listened. Nothing. Not even the wind outside was howling that night. Dead silence. His heart began racing faster and faster as he looked around the first floor. Nothing. As he made his way into the kitchen, a noise emanated from underneath his boot, a soft squish, as if he had stepped on a juicy tomato. He looked down and noticed mud. He started scanning from the living room to the kitchen, noticing tracks leading from the hardwood of the living room to the tiles of the kitchen, and straight out of the gaping back door straight into the mire. Everett grabbed his flashlight and, with his trusted point for Magnum in hand, made his way out the back door. He flicked on the flashlight and vigorously began searching. After an hour, Everett had found nothing. Not a single trace of anything or anyone. Angry, scared, and tired, Everett headed back to the house. A foul odor had begun to circulate, growing stronger as he neared the house. Fearing another dead animal was at his door, maybe something bigger in size this time, Everett hurried his pace to a quick stride. He tilted his head slightly down to catch his footwork as he headed up the back porch steps, careful so as not to trip. And that's when he saw it. While bringing his head back to its normal resting position, a pair of feet by the door caught his eye, a pair of muddy, gray feet. His gaze shifted from the feet to the nightgown, to the person in the nightgown, a woman whose eyes were gouged, whose lips had curled back into a skeletal smile, whose nose and ears writhed with maggots and dripped with mud. A woman who wore the ring set Everett had bought her for the day of their wedding. Everett awoke in a cold sweat, trembling in fear. He began to weep as he reached for the bottle of whiskey he kept on the bedside table and the sleeping pills beside he downed a handful of pills and to big gulps of whiskey. He got up to go to the bathroom and heard a slight rustle, then a small thud on the floor. It was a note addressed to him from Margaret. It seems to have fallen from behind her pillow. For my husband, Everett read, with a little heart drawn behind it. Everett smiled as he opened it. For my loving husband, I am so sorry I have failed you and our children. You have loved me unconditionally over the years, but I cannot go on living this way, though, with your habitual alcohol and drug consumption, along with your schizophrenia, it's unbearable at this point, topped with the stress of just everyday things. I've noticed over the years how much worse it's become, while at the same time, I admit I've grown distant. I told you I had a business trip in order to just get away. It was wrong of me, but I had to do this. By the time you read this, I will be gone. For how long is up to you. If you need me, you can find me out back, rotting in the mire. Story 5, The Statue. He was an exceedingly average man. He had sometimes done good deeds and had sometimes done bad deeds. He had built up bad habits and good habits, neither outweighing the other. He was just average. If anyone had asked him, he couldn't have said why he decided to go through the Museum of Modern Art in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week. It was almost completely deserted, his footfalls echoing as he walked from room to room. He didn't see anything he particularly liked, or anything he particularly disliked. Ed, for that matter. He walked into one room and drew up short as he saw the statue against one wall. It was very big and very ugly. It was roughly humanoid, but it was a caricature of a person, almost like a cartoon, vividly colored, and yet it was made in such a way that it seemed like something ancient, as if it was made thousands of years ago. Its face had a ridiculously long proboscis hanging straight down past its chin. It was about 20 feet tall, but its waist was only about 5 feet off the ground, making its torso 3 times longer and much broader than its legs. It just looked wrong, for lack of a better word. It didn't belong here. Not here in the museum, but here in this universe. He realized he'd been staring at it for several minutes. He shook his head and turned away to look at the other pieces of art in the room. He walked along, trying to pay some attention to them, but he realized he was still thinking about the statue. He had such a strong reaction against it, yet the fact that it gripped him as it did showed that the artist did something right. He wondered whether this is what art aficionados meant by good art. Art that was so bad that it grabbed a hold of your psyche and wouldn't let go. He kept trying to look at the paintings and smaller sculptures in the room, but his mind kept drifting back to the statue. Finally, with a sigh, he turned back to look at it again. The statue was staring at him. No, it wasn't, but God, it had looked that way for a moment. The statue had its eyes looking at a particular place and he had inadvertently wandered into its field of vision. He walked sideways, facing the statue, but moving away from where he had just been standing, and the statue's eyes did not follow him. They continued staring at the same place. His heart was beating fast, and he laughed at himself for being so spooked. The laugh echoed through the row, and those beyond. He turned away from the statue again and looked at some of the other pieces in the room again. Eventually he worked his way to the doorway at the other end of the room where he had entered. As he was about to step through, he looked back at the statue for one final glimpse. The statue was staring at him. Its head was turned and it was staring at him, and its expression had changed. Before it had been blank, like a soldier standing at attention. Now it looked disgusted, offended, contemptuous. He walked back into the room, but the statue didn't move. Its gaze remained on the doorway where he had turned back to see it. He didn't want to, but he walked up to it. He was thinking he should touch it to see what it was made of, but he didn't want to. He wasn't sure why, but there was something about the statue that made him afraid to touch it. He had the sudden thought that it must be partially mechanical, able to move slightly as a part of its artistic value. The thought came with a wave of immense relief that would explain it. Perhaps the artist would move it remotely when someone was in the room in order to get a reaction. Perhaps he was on film right now. At some point, there would be a collection of reactions to the statue on video, his included. He wondered whether an audience would have been able to see his disgust when he first saw the statue, whether the moments of terror he felt the 2 times he turned around and saw it looking at him had shown on his face. Well, he didn't want to be a part of some hidden camera event, even if it was artistic in a sense. "Hello," he said, "I don't want to take part in this. You don't have my permission to show my image anywhere." He waited while the echoes of his voice died down. There was nothing, no sound at all. "Hello," he said again. Nothing. He didn't want to take his eyes off the statue, but he wasn't going to stay in this room any longer. He walked over to the doorway he had first entered the room by and leaned out of it, holding on to the doorframe, and called out a 3rd time, "Hello," when no answer was forthcoming. He decided to just walk through the room and exit at the far side. He turned around. The statue's face was 5 inches from his. He screamed and fell back, banging his head against the wall. He scrambled away, but the statue didn't move, its eyes continuing to stare at the place he had been moments before. Its mouth parted in an impossibly wide grin, its teeth so big that they were actually bigger than the nose, much bigger. There was no way those teeth could have fit inside that mouth when it was closed. They were sharp, the teeth of a predator. It had bent over a the waist, its obscenely long torso allowing it to place its face right next to his without its legs moving at all. It should have been completely off balance by this, but somehow it stayed frozen in place. He continued to crawl away from it until he reached a wall which he used to stand up. He inched his way along the wall towards the far exit. Despite his panic, he was still able to hold on to the idea that the statue was mechanical and was being moved around for some purpose. "Hello, stop it. I want you to stop it. This isn't funny. I don't want anything to do with you or this statue or this museum. Do you hear me? Just stop." He continued moving along the wall, his eyes fixed on the statue, afraid to look away. It didn't move. He got to the doorway on the opposite side of the room, probably 15 meters away from it. The distance made him feel safer, but not much. Keeping his eye on the statue at all moments, he slowly eased his way out of the room. Washington, as not going to look away. His view of the statue would only be broken when the wall came between him and it. He was now standing completely in the next room over, but he could still see the statue, razzily bent over at the waist, its face and maniacal grin all the way across the room, looking at the spot where he had stood about 2 minutes before. He slowly took a sideways step. Now the wall block hid him from seeing its head, thank goodness, but he could still see its torso and legs. Another step, and only its waist and legs were still in view. One more, and he could no longer see it. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself, and then made a decision. He was going to get out of this museum right now. He was going to walk quickly, very quickly, to the exit and he was never going to come here or anywhere nearby ever again. He turned. The statue's face was 4 inches from his. He screamed and fell down on the floor for the second time. The statue's face had changed again. Before it had looked at him in disgust, as if he were some type of repulsive insect. Now its face showed a different emotion. Fury, rage. He scrambled away, trying to get out from under the statue's gaze as much as to get away from it. Physically, he moved to his left hand. The statue remained utterly still, staring at the space he had just occupied. He got to a wall, and once again used it to stand up. He crept along it, his eyes fixed on the statue, but with the idea that he had to get to the door behind it. He wasn't sure why, but he was not in a position to think through it rationally. It wasn't until he got to the doorway that he realized why he had gone there. From this doorway he could see the statue, still motionless, but he could also see into the first room where he had first seen the statue. From this vantage point, he could keep the statue in view and look at where it had been. If he could see the statue in the first room while also seeing this statue in this room, he would know that there were several of them positioned around the museum, the trap and wary patrons. That was the only way he could keep the idea alive that this was some bizarre artistic experiment, except the space where the statue had first been was now empty. The statue in this room was the same one that had been in that room. In the there are 6 seconds that it was out of his view. It had somehow moved from the first room to this room, somehow come up behind him without passing him, and without being seen. It was impossible. He shrunk into himself. He didn't know what to do. The moment he took his eyes off the statue, it would somehow move, while staying motionless, to another position. He backed up into yet another room, but still with the statue in his vision. A thought occurred to him. Run. Just turn around and run like hell. The apparent benefits of this overwhelmed everything else, so he obeyed the impulse. The moment he did, the statue was in front of him again, its face full of the same fury and rage, as well as a visceral hatred he had never felt towards another, nor been the recipient of. Its teeth were bared again, and it looked to him like the statue was going to consume him, devour him. All this he got in a fraction of a second as he checked his forward motion and fell back against a wall. This time he didn't scream. He was beyond that now. He stood there, staring at this monstrosity, and despaired. "This isn't fair," he said, then louder. "This isn't fair. I'm just an average man. I didn't do anything bad enough to deserve this. It's not fair." His voice, the only sound in the museum, echoed, making it seem louder. Somehow this got him back a bit of his dignity. He walked back up to the statue, looked it right in the eye, and yelled, "Move, damn you. I know you're going to get me, so just move." And the statue began to dance. It was impossible. Its motions were contradictions, not just strange, but actual fulfillments of logical impossibilities. It couldn't possibly exist, and he knew it was here to take him into its non-existence. His last coherent thought before entering his eternity of insanity was that even average men can go to hell, and the demon pounced. Story 6, Mirrored Man. Curiosity is quite simply a bitch, but me being me, adventurous to the point one become stupid. Let my curiosity roam free. I should probably give you some background first, so you understand what I'm about to tell you better. I live in a quiet and seemingly perfect town in Connecticut. What originally was a peaceful farming town was now wealthy and stuck up to an unbearable sense. Hence why when an outlet was soon to appear featuring only designer stores, many were incredibly happy. I, on the other hand, was anything but. You see, there's this abandoned farmhouse where the outlets were soon to inhabit, and personally I thought they were ruining a beautiful historical site of what this town once was. Still, construction was to be carried out within just a few months. My best friend and I, in all our disappointment, decided to drive down to the farmhouse before it was to be dismantled. As it is, I love abandoned places, so this was bound to be an amazing night. It took us 15 minutes to drive down, and we parked off a tiny gravel road that was very apparently not been used for quite some time. Already we could see part of the old barn roof collapsing from a fire long ago, and nails sticking up here and there. Further into the distance we spotted two cars, both clearly from the days when the farm was running. One was a small blue car, both front doors pulled off from the hinges that once held it. The other was gray and barely recognizable, pretty much just rusty scraps of metal forming a car-like shape. Looking off to the right, we spotted the main house, 2 stories, and slowly decaying. White paint was peeling off the house, and all the glass in the windows were shattered. I guess you could call it the typical horror house, but I still found it beautiful in a vintage way. My friend, while adventurous, became more cautious than I was as the sky turned to a pale pink striped with the inevitable dark blue overtaking the sky. I grabbed the flashlight HDS in the glove compartment, and we both got out. "Sarah, relax. It's just an old farmhouse, not some cemetery or whatever bullshit you read about online." I blew it off, knowing if she became freaked out, I would be too. I know, but still, it's so creepy, and I suppose it was. As the light became less and less within the sky, you could still see the farmhouse's white paint almost glowing. There was silence between us for a few moments as we continued to survey the land, our flashlights scouring over it. A twig broke about 5 feet away, and we both jumped, frightened by whatever animal had the perfect timing to make such a noise. "Let's look at the barn first." "Okay." We walked over, both in complete silence. I think a bit of fear was starting to set in between us, but no one admitted to it. The barn itself was short in width, but in length about the size of a football field. No joke, it was really that big, which was odd, but I didn't think too much of it. The fact the barn had been in a fire was apparent. There was warped metal laying about and half-charred pieces of wood. Sarah and I attempted to enter, but soon realized there was a wasp nest, and so, me rats, neither we wanted to disturb. However, in the right corner of the barn door, recently spray-painted, was a pentagram with the word "Beware" sprayed above it. Graffiti from the fucking badass high school kids. I smirked and rolled my eyes. They were always trying to be edgy, but a pentagram? How completely and utterly unoriginal. Oddly enough, though, the feeling of being watched crept over me, and Sarah's face showed she was feeling the same. "This feels wrong," she softly spoke, as if afraid to be overheard. "Why, yes, I suppose sneaking into an abandoned farmhouse would ruffle one's feathers and be publicly deemed as wrong." I knew my sarcasm was a bit harsh, but I was starting to feel agitated and unsettled by this whole situation. I wasn't as sure of myself as the feeling continued, almost like a bad decision that never leaves your side. The wind, as if egging us on, started blowing up around us, consuming our hair, and spinning it around into a tangle. "Listen, let's just go into the house. The barn's nothing special anyway," I grunted in dissatisfaction. My feet weren't agreeing with my body, wanting to stay exactly where it was, but my brain wanted to go forward and eventually won. Walking, a nervous Sarah in tow, the house almost seemed more menacing as we got closer, and I thought I could see a shadow in the second story window, whatever. Honestly, it was probably just a trick of the light, our flashlights reflecting off an object. Some scientific reason, maybe a passing car's headlights. We entered the house through the back door, steps surprisingly sturdy for how old it was. There was a simple rug, an old type of welcome mat, and a chair just a few feet away on a tiny porch. Upon walking in, the abandonment was more than apparent. Nails were sticking up here and there, rusty and long. Old yellowed newspapers showing those old comic strips hid the floors, but one thing did look oddly new: a pillow just sitting in the middle of what my best guess was once a living room, a maroon pillow, bright as day, nothing like the decayed and dusty leftovers in the rest of the house. "What the actual fuck?" I whispered to Sarah. That's when we heard it, the steps creaking above slowly, as if someone was aware of our presence as we were of theirs. At this point my body was completely frozen as the creaking sped up a bit, coming forth to the stairs off to the side, and then the steps started sprinting. Both me and Sarah screamed, blood-curdling, preparing for the worst possible scenario. I felt no horror movie could prepare me for whatever was about to come down, and I was right. To be honest, I don't care now what it really was. No words I can find to describe it to its full extent of just utter terror it inhabited. It was a taller thing, with four black sockets of eyes, two on each side, think owl, like a spider, and a crooked mouth. There was no nose, just the skeletal structure of where one should have been. Bits of his cheekbones seemed to be ripped off, or maybe just missing, and his body was there, but not simultaneously. I couldn't even begin to explain, but the two arms, from what I could see, I'm assuming they were ended in long hands that glinted in the pale moonlight. It clicked. He was made up almost entirely of glass. That's how he could be there and not at the same time. He opened his mouth to show what were fine-toothed razors and let out a sound, between a scream, a shriek, and a bawl. I think Sarah realized this, because we ran off to the side door screaming at almost the exact same time, thrusting the creaky door open, not daring to even glance back, and we ran down the stairs. Both of us stayed quiet, knowing any sound could give away our location, though this thing probably already knew. As my eyes adjusted to the now complete darkness, having to turn off our flashlights as to not be spotted, I saw something that still amazes me to this day. Mirrors every wall. Even the ceiling and floor were covered in mirrors. They gleamed our reflect, hined from every direction in the room, broadcasting ourselves for this monstrosity behind us. The stairs gave fact that it was coming, creaking under its weight and protest, and Sarah let out a tiny gasp, too shocked for words anymore. Do you remember the lights we got as children? The one that purposely flashed silhouettes on the wall for Halloween or stars or something. Think of that times 1,000 as it entered the room. He was there, everywhere, yet nowhere all at once. Scurrying away from the stairs as far as possible, we began to search for a door. The thing laughed. It fucking laughed, or what I assume was its laugh, as we desperately tried to get away. We couldn't tell the difference between the real creature and the mirror copies. It loved watching our struggle. Help, I cried to no one in particular, and as Sarah began to sob, he was coming closer. No matter what direction you looked in, his image became larger. You could clearly see now that he really was made up of shards of glass, and his four black eye sockets glowed a type of red I've never seen before. Stumbling over myself, I found a latch and desperately grabbed at it, yanking the thing open and seeing the outside. Sarah and I screamed, running full-fledged out of there towards our car, a loud pattering following us closely behind. Making it to the car, we quite literally hopped in, hoping to drive away as fast as we could. No such luck, though, as it jumped on our front hood as if he was trying out for a Spider-Man movie. I cry, real Izzy. And gee, my chance to live was slipping away, knowing it had every intention to kill us. Its smile wider than humanly possible, those glass teeth glinting with menace. Time, it croaked out, in an odd voice, if that's what you could call it. Death, Lucifer, hell, all real. The only words I picked up from the soft, raspy voice talking to us. Then it started crying, full out bawling, and blood ran from its empty eye sockets. I was completely in shock now, knowing I was about to die any second, but not knowing why. The thing looked up from between its opaque hands, as if realizing we were still here. Its tongue darted from its mouth, licking his lips in a type of hungry way. Food good for soul. Rubbing its stomach in a caveman-type fashion, it cocked its head. I took the chance of its apparent admiration of how good we looked and started the car, jamming on the gas to turn around. Falling off the hood, it shrieked and disappeared altogether. A black voice, small, but definitely there, swallowing him up. Driving as fast as I could go off the gravel road and onto the highway, I started to calm my breathing down. Did that just, oh my God, no way. Sarah couldn't manage a full sentence as she tried to take in all that happened. I can't begin to understand. Doesn't just no sense at all, was all I said. What the hell was that thing doing there? An abandoned farmhouse of all places. Did you see pentagram the basement? The pentagram in the basement, Sarah muttered out, almost as if to herself. I had been fixed on only finding an escape and not dying. Shaking my head, I felt a coldness enraptured me. It was on a mirror. As soon as it appeared down those steps, it lit up bluish glow, so creepy I can't believe you didn't see it. Her thoughts were jumbled. So was it a demon? Sarah was more religious than I, so I figured yeah, was all she responded, and it hung in the air with a hollow grip on our souls. Story 7, East Gate. Nobody believes in vampires, they're just myths. Old folk tales that have been bastardized by cinema, pulp horror, and cheap romance done to death until they're nothing but a cliché. Only children are afraid of them, which is a far cry from the fear they once caused. A fear so great that villages of men who would be considered reasonable would defile a grave and mutilate its inhabitant. I'm not going to pretend as if I don't understand it. I would have scoffed at the notion, too. I never once saw myself hunting them, and even then I would have imagined something far more dramatic, a special kit full of stakes, silver bullets, and other tools to kill the undead. Not a beat-up Chevy, a photograph of a woman, and countless restless nights in a motel. The part of my brain that was still somewhat sane was amused by the mundane reality of vampire hunting. But sane or not, every day I would drive in search of the dead. Her name was Harriet Hartman. She was an unassuming woman in her middle age, brown hair tied back into a bun, Coke bottle glasses, and laugh lines around her smile. She looked more like a librarian than a vampire. I think that was why she was such an effective killer. Over the weeks I'd spent tracking her, I'd determined a pattern. She fed roughly once a week, and she liked couples. She'd approach a woman in a public space and spend a few days with them, befriending them. Then she'd take them away, usually to a motel, and soon after, the man would follow. TH would then disappear, and Harriet would deposit the keys to her room and vanish before daybreak. Most of the time, it was a boyfriend and girlfriend, but sometimes it was a father and a daughter, too, co-workers, a sister and a brother, always a man and a woman, save for the occasions when she couldn't get her hands on the man. Then she'd only take the woman and vanish into the HT, just like she took my little girl, my Pauline, and she'd almost taken my son James. The disappearances weren't well documented, but when I started putting the pieces together, the picture became clearer. On the rare occasions where they did find bodies, they were dismembered and drained of blood, but she stayed in the county. I would have thought there would have been more of an investigation, but there wasn't. That's why I had to do it. That's why I was the only one who could. Through my weeks of study, I realized something. Harriet always traveled, and she seemed to hit just about every town, save for one, a little oceanside hamlet called Eastgate. There were no murders there, no sign of Harriet, but every town she hit was no less than 5 hours away, and the closer they were, the more frequent the attacks. So that was where I looked. If I was wrong, and it wasn't her home, then I had nothing to lose. But if I was right, I could stop her once and for all I could avenge my little girl. Eastgate wasn't easy to find. It was barely a blip on most maps, and when I got there, I could see why too many houses were boarded U.P. The local McDonald's was only recognizable by the lighter space on the wall where the sign had once been. No customers inside. Nothing in the parking lot but weeds peeking through the cracks in the pavement. I was surprised, honestly. A town like that should have been lively and booming in late spring. It had a perfect location, right by the shore. When I parked my car at the motel and sat out, I could hear the distant cries of gulls and the lazy crash of the ocean. But instead, this place was dead. Stepping into the motel office, I was greeted by a sleepy-looking woman watching a movie on an old TV. Judging by the lines in her face, she was somewhere between 17 and 71. It was hard to tell for sure. Good afternoon. I booked a room for Terry McKinnon. The woman paused her movie and didn't bother confirming my reservation. The motel was empty. She grabbed the key nearest to her. "We charge up front," she said, "plus a $50 retainer fee. Keeps the rooms looking nice." I paid without complaint. If Harriet was here, it was more than worth it. As she printed out the receipt, I took out the photograph I had of her. A picture taken at a bar by a friend of some of her victims. In it, you could clearly see a stoic-faced couple, and behind them Harriet. She watched them from the bar, through her Coke bottle glasses. At a glance, it would be easy to ignore her, but I was convinced she was staring at them, sizing them up. By any chance, you wouldn't happen to have seen this woman around before, would you? The woman behind He counter paused and leaned in towards the picture. "Can't remember," she replied. "I don't think I have." I didn't get the impression that she was lying. The motel room was cleaner than I'd anticipated. I'd expected a dingy mess. That the beds were soft, the carpets were vacuumed, the room smelled nice. Care had obviously been put into maintaining this place. I took some time to get situated. I checked the news for anything that might indicate Harriet had struck again. They'd found some unidentified body parts a few towns over, but from the sound of it, those weren't fresh. I knew those parts would be forgotten quickly, that murder would never be solved. Someone else had just lost a child, and the world didn't care. C'est la vie. When I had started my investigation, I'd initially pegged Harriet as some sort of serial killer. She fit the bill all right. It wasn't until I managed to catch up to her a little over a week ago that I learned any different. We were staying in the same motel, and I saw her leaving as I checked, and I watched her closely right up until she let another innocent girl into that room, just like she'd done with my Pauline. I was going to try and catch her in the act. I convinced myself I was going to save that girl, so I took some extreme measures. I'd already bought a gun, and I kept it in my pocket as I threw a chair rough the window of her room, and then barged in like a madman. I found her with her teeth in that girl's neck. Harriet tossed her aside and rose to confront me. Blood ran down the neck of her victim, but there was none on her lips. As she stood, I could see her fangs in the moonlight, and in my shock I fired at her. The bullets hit her in the chest, but she barely even flinched. Hands bared, she fell upon me, seizing me by the throat. Her eyes studied me in the instant before she smiled. "It appears I have a stalker," she said calmly. Desperate for help, I looked over at the girl she'd brought in with her. She sat on the bed, a hand pressed to the wound in her neck, but she didn't run for help. She just stared at us, at me, just an observer to our drama as it played out before her. "You look familiar. Have we met?" Harriet asked. "You took my fucking daughter." My language made her recoil more than any of my bullets had. Ah, did I now? Was it Pauline by any chance? She was a good girl. I almost hit her for saying her name, but my fear of her stayed my hand. "You're a good father, looking to avenge her like that. She was a very lucky girl." Just like that. Harriet tossed me aside like I was nothing. "Just for that, I'll let you leave this time. Go home. Following me isn't going to get you anywhere." I should have listened to her. She took the girl and walked over me. She was in her car and gone long before anyone came to investigate the nose, and by then I was gone too. I took a walk on the beach to clear my head. The stink of the ocean didn't bother me. On the contrary, it helped me clear my mind and set up a plan of attack. If Harriet was here, someone had to have seen her. I brought up a map of the town on my phone and picked out all the locations that might help me. Hubs for the community. Bars, restaurants, the local grocery store. All the perfect places to look. There wasn't much in Eastgate, so I couldn't imagine it would take me that long to get through everything. My little walk helped me get a lay of the land. Eastgate had a small main drag leading down to the empty beach. And the south side of the town was a seawall with a dock and marina. There were a few houses out that way, but nothing much. To the north, the houses were a bit nicer. It wasn't quite a suburb, but it almost passed as one. The stores there were all local businesses. Eastgate was too small to support anything larger, like a Walmart or Target. The few deviations were a small school and a halfway house beside a bus station. Strangely enough, I never saw a single bus pass by while I was in Eastgate. I had lunch at a little diner by the marina. Fish that was over-battered and P.S. that were mushy and bland. I flashed the picture to the owner, who frowned and shook his head. "Can't say I've seen her around," he admitted. "Least I don't think I have." I thanked him and paid my bill as he disappeared out back, reaching into his pocket for his cell phone as he did. I got the impression that my patronage had been more of a bother to him than a boon. With my stomach comfortably full of grease, I started to walk back to the main drag. I planned out my next move. Maybe I'd try the grocery store next, or a bar. I'd take the time to cover a few more places that day, and then try the rest the next. If I got nothing by then, it would be time for a new plan. Heading towards downtown, I passed my motel and paused as I saw a familiar red Lamborghini Aventador parked out front right beside my car. I stopped and stared at it for a few moments, and as I did, I saw a man get out. At 29, James was a reflection of everything I could have been. Handsome, successful, smart, a great athlete. I was proud of him. No matter what, I'd left our company in his hands a few months back, and he'd grown into the role quickly. That Lambo even suited him better than it ever suited me. James strode towards me, tall and confident, looking around at the empty scenery around us. "What are you doing here, Dad?" he asked, voice stern as if he were the father, and I were the child enjoying my retirement. I replied he didn't buy that for a second. You're wasting your time out here. You're not going to find Pauline. No, but who knows? Maybe I'll run into something else. James' brow creased. How many times do I have to tell you to leave it to the police? Should I asked, because they've done a really stellar job so far, haven't they? I'm taking you home, the statement was curt and demanding, leaving no room for negotiation. Clearly he didn't know who he was talking to. The hell you are, I brush. Deep past him, heading towards town again, ever persistent. That boy of mine followed me. You can't just keep chasing her, Dad. What if you end up dead? Then I'm sure it'll be a lovely funeral. I reply, I need a drink. Are you coming or not? James sighed in disapproval, but kept stride with me. Look, if you're mad at me, I get it. She called me to tea at motel room, and I blew her off. But you told me yourself she was probably already dead, whether or not she made that call. I know, I reply. I don't blame you, James. I blame the bitch that took her. Just because we didn't find the body doesn't mean I know. I said it more sharply than I intended, and James stopped in his tracks, unsure of how to respond to me. Just give me a few days to look around. All right, that's all I ask, I said to him. Can you do that for me? He nodded slowly. Yeah. Okay, Dad, but afterwards you come home, stop chasing the killer, because if you don't, sooner or later you're going to run into her, and you're going to get hurt. Now it was my turn to nod, but I didn't say anything. I kept walking towards the bar, leaving James behind. The town bar was called Shelby's Place. Dim red lights and country music gave the place a homey feel. The bartender was a muscular, bald man with a heavy beard. I ordered a gin and tonic before showing him the picture. In the low light, he took a few moments to look before he shook his head. As he did, the doors to the bar opened, and a woman walked in. She was young and dark-skinned. Her eyes held a knowing look to them. There was something about the way she moved, methodical and seductive, like the ocean itself. She sat a few seats away from me, and the bartender was on her immediately. I'll have the usual, Gary. Wordlessly, he fixed her a drink, and after a moment's thought, I changed seats to sit beside her. Put it on my tab, I said. Her eyebrow rose, but she didn't protest. Thanks, stranger. To what do I owe the pleasure? Her tone was flirtatious. I thought you might answer a question for me. That's all, I reply. Her smile I deemed. Well then, the answer is yes, I am single. I caught myself blushing just a little bit. I'm sorry, that wasn't exactly it. I'm looking for someone. Actually, I took out the picture again. See anyone you recognized? She looked down at the picture and followed my finger to Harriet's face. Nothing could hide the recognition in her eyes, but she didn't answer immediately. I've seen her around, she finally said, and looked back up at me. What's your business? I wanted to ask her some questions. I reply, that's all. It was a lie, but I didn't much care for that. The woman propped her head up with her hand. That's all, huh? She asked. Well, I'll give you a pass since you're obviously new here. You're one of those boys out by the motel, right? I caught you having an argument with that fella with the fancy red car a little while ago. Yeah, that's my son, James, I admitted. We're just looking into the disappearance of my daughter. I was told that woman might know something. So you're not cops, then? The woman asked. I'm just a concerned father. The woman nodded thoughtfully as the bartender brought her drink, a rum and coke. She took a sip. I can check and see if she's around. Harriet goes out of town on business every few days. Do you know what kind of business? I asked. House calls. The woman replied, I'm sorry. I don't think I caught your name right. Sorry. I'm Terry McKinnon. Well, nice to meet you, Terry. You can call me Clarice. Anyhow, maybe if she's in town, I can introduce you later. After all, you seem nice enough, and Harriet is a sweetheart. She wouldn't hurt a fly. I highly doubted that. I'd appreciate it, I said. Just let me now when. Stick around your motel. I'll come knocking, Clarice replied, and raised her glass to me. Thanks for the drink, Terry. James' car was still out front of the motel when I got back. The sun was starting to go down and bathe the otherwise empty parking lot in a golden glow. Walking past the Lambo, I found myself thinking about how small it looked. How had I ever enjoyed driving that thing, seeing it beside the used sedan I'd bought a while back. I realized that I actually preferred the sedan, staring into the empty driver's seat of that cramped, angular car. I caught myself resenting it a little bit. All my life it had been my dream car. Each and every success had brought me closer and closer to it. I'd made so many sacrifices just for that dream of success. My ex-wife, Megan, had called me a workaholic. I'd told her I was only doing it to provide for my family, but that was a lie. I did it for me. I did it for the money, and those sacrifices always seemed so small. I missed a few weekends, and I didn't see my family often. When I was home, I was tired and irritable. Pauline had taken the divorce especially hard. She and James had lived with her mother for the first few years. The only reason they ever came back to me was because Megan had passed away. I trusted James to raise her right. He was the older child, and thus the more responsible one. I had my work to worry about, always my work. Now, all these years later, here I was, staring at my beloved Lambo and hating it. I called James to join me for dinner that night, but he didn't answer his phone. I could only imagine he was avoiding me, so I ordered takeout from the one pizza place in town and waited for Clarice. She came for me around 8 that evening, knocking on my door. Good evening, Terry, she said softly. Sorry to keep you waiting. She walked in without an invitation. I stopped by the halfway house and asked about Harriet. They told me she was going to get back in tonight, and I know she's a bit of a night owl, so I thought it might not hurt to swing by and talk to her. Are you sure she'd be okay with tea? I asked. Yeah. They gave me her number and I checked in with her. She said she'd be up for a while if you wanted to swing by. I studied Clarice for a few moments. It had occurred to me that she was working with Harriet, but it seemed almost too paranoid. I don't see why not then, I replied. Clarice tipped me a winning smile before leaning against my door. All right, and I'm guessing you've never been to the halfway house before, have you? I can show you the way. Give me a minute. I need to freshen up a bit first. I lie and shooed her out of the room. I didn't need long. I changed my shirt and put on some deodorant. But that wasn't why I'd chased her off. I pocketed the gun and hid a wooden stake I'd fashioned a while back in my belt. If I had a shot, I wasn't going to waste it. Clarice was waiting patiently when I stepped out of the room to join her. We made small talk as we walked down the beach towards the halfway house. The house in question didn't look much different than any of the other suburban houses by the beach. It was large but well-maintained, with a wraparound porch that looked homey. As we drew closer, I could see a figure sitting in a chair on that porch. I could see the slight burn of a cigarette. Harriet sat patiently, waiting for me like we had all the time in the world. "Hey, Mrs. H," Clarice said, playful. Why, as we drew nearer, Harriet exhaled smoke and smiled. "Good to see you again, Clarice. Is that the man you mentioned?" "Yup, this is Terry." Harriet's eyes rested on M knowingly. "Well, thank you for bringing him along. Head on inside. Patricia had a birthday last night. There's some cake still left over. Help yourself. Terry, would you like to have a seat?" She offered me a spot beside her. As Clarice proudly stepped into the house again, I stood in the sand for a while, watching the bookish vampire as she smoked her cigarette. No sound except for the gulls and the Washington vest. After a few tense moments, she spoke. "I can't imagine what you think of me, Terry." She sighed. "I assume you have some means to kill me on hand." "Correct." "Correct," I replied. The slightest smile crossed her lips. "Well, I should have seen this coming. You're the first person to follow me home. It was bound to happen eventually. You can't just go around murdering innocent people," I replied. "Did you think no one would notice? It would be naive of me to say yes. I'd hoped what I paid the local law for cement might keep anyone from digging too deep, but you're made of sterner stuff. It seems," she chuckled, "from what Pauline told me, you were the last person I expected to see showing up at my door. But I suppose I shouldn't be surprised after our encounter at the motel. When I heard someone had shown up in town asking about me, I had my suspicions. I hope you don't mind that I set Clarice to collect you, but dragging this out wouldn't have benefited either of us." I took the stake from my coat, and Harriet's eyes focused on it, but she didn't move. She inhaled on her cigarette. "If you're going to kill me, would you mind if I asked you a question first?" she asked. I paused before nodding my head. I dreaded the moment when she'd pounce, when it was either her or me, and I have to drive my stake through her heart. But she didn't move. "How did I choose my victims?" "You chose couples. One man, one woman," I replied. She shook her head. No. Often, yes, it was a man and a woman. But what did every pair have in common? To that I had no answer. Harriet sat patiently through my silence. "I suppose by tracking me here, you've become a monster hunter, haven't you?" she finally asked. "It might interest you to know that I'm something of a monster hunter myself. People call for help all the time. So I visit them, I assess the situation, and if need be, I deal with the problem. Abuse is like the tide. It waxes and wanes. It drowns those caught in it. One sad truth about humanity is that people don't change. Terry, some do. You did. But all, not the worst of them. Some people only destroy. They take, they hurt, they rape. I didn't choose to become what I am today. but they chose to commit their sins. What or why? Who talking about? I asked. I'm talking about my victims. The bodies they found scattered along the roadways. Yes, that was me. But those were the monsters, abusers, rapists, no better than animals. And what about the women? I asked. You expect me to believe that they're fine? Why take them then? For safety, Harriet replied. If a body turns up, they usually the first suspect. I've seen good people suffer from my crimes. That isn't what I want. So instead I take them with me. I help them heal, and when the time comes, start again. And they let you feed on the I asked. Some do. Some have nothing left, and they ask to become like me, like Pauline. My heart stopped in my chest. You're lying. Am I? Harriet tilted her head to the side and stood up from her seat. You can come out now, on her command. The door to the house opened. I stared in silence as she stepped out onto the porch. My little girl, my Pauline, alive and harm, she was there, right there in front of me. I dropped the stake, eyes fixated on her. My feet compelled me forwards. I stumbled over my own defeat as I dumbly ran to her, snatching her up into my arms and hugging her close. The tears streamed down my cheeks as I felt my Pauline's arms slowly wrap around me and turn. I thought I lost you, I gasped. I thought you were dead. I'm sorry, Dad, I couldn't stay. Pauline said softly, her face pressed against my shoulder. I had to leave. I didn't think you'd care. Those words broke my heart. But you understood why she said them. Never in my life had I been a good father to her. It had been one disappointment after the next. I knew why she had felt that way, and I hated myself for it. I'm sorry, I whispered, running my fingers through her hair. I'm so sorry. Harriet turned away, looking out over the crashing waves and allowing us our privacy. Who hurt her? I finally asked. Harriet looked back at me. Her smile was gone. Isn't it obvious? She said. It was. Harriet sighed, and as my hug broke with my daughter, I caught a look of shame on Pauline's face. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't think you'd believe me if I cupped her cheeks, silencing her. I'm the one who owes you an apology, I replied. I should have known. There had to have been signs. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she bowed her head into me, and again I looked over to Harriet. Where's James? Inside, she replied. We weren't sure if it would be better to ate for you or do it before. I didn't want this to end in violence. It won't, I assured her. I assume you're going to kill him. Yes, no lies, no tricks, straight to the point. The truth hurt. It was like a knife in my heart. But now I held my daughter trembling in my arms. I stood here because of what James had done, because of what I had allowed. All right. It was the only thing I had to say. I asked. Stood on the beach with Pauline at my side as Clarice and two other dragged James out. I recognized one of the girls as the one I'd seen Harriet feeding on. Dad, James' voice was cracked, head with fear. What the hell is going on? His eyes settled on Pauline and widened. How? I know what you did, I replied calmly. The look on James' face confirmed. No. Whatever she told you, it's a lie. I didn't touch her. I would never. She's my sister. I swear to God, I'd never. He struggled and fought against the women. Harriet watched quietly from the balcony, and Pauline, he left my side to approach him. Dad, come on, you've got to believe. Me? Goddamn it. Dad, I just stood there and stared as Pauline loomed over him. One of the other girls jerked James' head back. He cried and struggled. He fought. He begged. But he did not escape her teeth. Last night I parked the Lambo on the edge of the harbor. I put it in neutral, and I pushed it into the harbor. James' suicide letter is in his room. What he did was unforgivable, but through my neglect I enabled it, and so I share the blame. Tomorrow I will leave Eastgate alone, and perhaps somewhere in the distance I may find my absolution.